Welcome into the Daily Roto Sharks Football Podcast. I'm Jeremy Conn. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Conn. That's CONN 1057. Joined today. This is kind of cool. I like meeting the new guys, not the new guys, but on the podcast because we get a chance to chat back and forth on our little Twitter stream here, but don't get a chance to really talk to you guys all that much. But we have Jaguar DFS. Lou is with us. Lou, how you doing?
Hanging in there, man. How are you?
Good, good. And just to let everybody know, Lou, we've talked about it. You have Tourette's. Something that you feel like you're going to have under control, but just let everybody know it's got to be interesting for you trying to control that when we're recording.
Listen, it's a thing, but I figure people with Tourette's could be neurosurgeons, so this shouldn't be too difficult. Let's get this slate done and make some money. That's what I say.
We will be dissecting the slate, so that's a nice little segue.
Good wordplay.
Yeah. So a lot to go over. You can follow Lou on Twitter at Jaguar DFS. And we have Sean Hoy. You can follow him at Sean Hoy 27 on Twitter. Sean, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm pretty good. It's just week 1 was all defense, and then week 2 was extremely high scoring. We'll see if we can actually find like a normal week this week.
Yeah, Lou's a GPP guy, and it's funny because we were talking off the air, and I said I'm going to be doing a ton of cash this week, trying to build up the bankroll. I'm still going to play in some GPPs. I mean, everybody does, but I found myself right there on that line where if the cutoff was 2,000, I was at like 2005, 2007, and it's so tilting when you just miss even cashing in your GPPs just to win your money back. But cash, I've been doing fine, doubling up my money each and every week, so feel good about that. And then I played that short Monday, the first week, Monday night, Thursday night slate, and had all the right pieces except for the tight end because I went Hunter Henry, and he didn't have a single catch, and that cost me a bundle. So, yeah, but, getting back in the action, week 3, I think it's a pretty good slate. You get to miss out on – I mean, if you played last night's game, that was crazy. You never know what to expect with football, a 41-39 matchup between the Rams and 49ers. So, lots of points to be had there. Todd Gurley, Carlos Hyde, so hopefully had some of that action. And I know some people kind of tilted that into the Baltimore-Jacksonville game, which is in London at 9:30. But we go position by position here. And, Lou, I'm going to start with you. A quarterback, finding that right guy. A lot of people were on Tom Brady last week, and I mean, he had a huge first half and really set you up if you had him. He's one of the more expensive quarterbacks. But give me your thoughts on who you like on this slate.
Well, everyone's talking about this, Andy Dalton, AJ Green matchup. And I'm not going to say it's not appetizing. It's what it is. I mean, they're going to throw back and forth to each other. The problem with this is you got, 2 guys that might go 60, 70% owned in your GPPs. Like, it's really ridiculous. And I think there's other ways to go. And personally, I'm going to be, investing a lot of ownership in Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen. I think it's a better matchup. I think that without, the berryless Kansas City Chiefs, like I wrote it up last week on the DFScoach.com, and, I wrote up Carson Wentz. I said, I like Tom Brady, but, I'm a value writer, I guess. That was my topic on the site. And I had to write someone value. And, smart quarterbacks will be able to dissect, defenses that are going through identity problems. And, Philadelphia's quarterback, what's his name? I always forget. Carson Wentz did it last week. He's a smart guy. It took a little garbage time to do it, but he definitely hit value. So this week, I do think Phillip Rivers does it. And I have no problem pairing Keenan Allen with Hunter, I really don't.
Yeah.
I think it's a lower-owned GPP play that could, be just as lucrative as the AJ Green, Andy Dalton thing.
Will you look at any of the top guys? The Breeze, the Brady, Rodgers. Do you look at any of those guys? Or are you always constantly trying to find value?
For GPP, I form my main core. So I get the guys that are value that I like, and then I go from there. And I usually try to get 4 or 5 core guys. I don't stray from that. If your core doesn't hit, you're not going to win a ticket anyway. I like to try to accumulate the live finals tickets. So,
right.
You're banking on 4 or 5 guys anyway. Why even change your mind? You did your research. You know who you like. I love Ty Montgomery. It's hard to go wrong with these guys when they're getting so much volume, and that's it. Like I keep the same 5 guys, and I rotate, one guy here or there. And honestly, I don't even worry about salary. Like GPP, you can't worry about salary.
Yeah.
It comes to the point where like all these guys are doing crazy lineups. You got, I personally don't do max entry, but I try to do as many as possible. But I always keep my same core. It's very important to me. Like I know who I like. I'll be locking in Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen for, I would say, 70-80% of my GPP lineups.
Wow. All right. Well, Sean, give me your thoughts on the quarterbacks and where you're looking, because I know you start doing your stuff a little early, looking at the numbers, breaking everything down.
Yeah, I usually always look for value at quarterback position. We all know that everyone picks on the Saints defense all the time. Cam Newton, I mean, he's interesting. I might have a few shares of him, but I mean, he's just been banged up, and he just hasn't looked like himself from his MVP season like 2 years ago. So we'll see how that goes. And plus, Kelvin Benjamin might be a little hobbled there. If I'm looking like contrarian-wise, I mean, I think some people might be on Matt Stafford in Atlanta, but I mean, I like Matt Stafford to Golden Tate. I think that could be a very low-owned contrarian stack for you. Or like my best tight end, my highest tight end, I know we shouldn't be doing this until later, but is Jack Doyle. And you could get Jack Doyle and Jacoby Brissett against the Browns at home for about 9,000. So, I mean, I know that's not like ridiculous, but Brissett still had like a little over 200 yards against Arizona. And
no, I mean, he, especially if you look early on, he just got to get comfortable in that offense. There's weapons there, and Doyle's I don't even like using the word serviceable, because I think he's better than that. That's why they let Dwayne Allen walk and wind up with the Patriots. But yeah, Doyle, I had him in a bunch of lineups week one. I did what most people did, fade the next week, and then of course, he has a nice week. But it wasn't like I was terrible last week. I think I was back on Zach Ertz in a couple of lineups. But as far as quarterbacks, what about guys like Kirk Cousins going up against an Oakland Raiders defense, traveling all the way to the East Coast? And Raiders have a great pass rush. Everybody's been waiting for Terrell Pryor to kind of get going, but Cousins has been a great DFS player, even though week one wasn't so good. I feel like he kind of caught his stride a little bit last week. He's a guy that I'm actually going to play a little bit of. Lou, what are your thoughts? I know you're big on Phillip Rivers, but are there any other quarterbacks that interest you?
The thing is like there's always quarterbacks you like, but you got to see who can you correlate him with. Like how many guys can you guarantee if my quarterback that I picked does well, I can guarantee that I can pair him with this wide receiver and this tight end, and that solves 3 slots on your lineup. Like basically, you're just trying to hit 20 points on each roster in your lineup. And my problem with this is like, I guess Terrell Pryor's been a disappointment. Like Crowder, like it's too up in the air for me to lock in as a core. Like, yeah, I like the fact that he's going up against Oakland, and I think there's value in it. But Terrell Pryor was awesome in Cleveland. Why has he? I'm looking at his stats right now. 9.6 points, 4.1 points. The targets were there in the first game. Philadelphia even lets up tons of big plays. Like, why isn't this happening? Like, I really don't invest in a play until I have some sort of sample size as to say, This is why I like them. And with Terrell Pryor struggling, Jamison Crowder's on here, I wouldn't put too much investment in Washington's offense, I don't think.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that has to do with Jordan Reed, whether or not he plays, because he's a difference maker, and he's banged up every week trying to figure out if he's going to give it a go. And that is the football game.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like Jordan Reed is so great. He goes like 130% all the time, but that's why he gets injured, and it's such a aggravating thing when he goes.
Sean, let's switch and start with you with running backs. And just a couple things to make note here. Everybody's fallen in love with Kareem Hunt, and justifiably so. Even last week when things didn't look all that great, he popped 2 in the second half. We saw him on Thursday night against the Patriots, and he absolutely went off. There's always that chance that he's going to end up being chalky. Le'Veon Bell, people are a bit down on him. One of these weeks, he's going to be that guy that just absolutely goes off. I don't know if it's against the Bears on the road. anybody that's watched the Steelers or knows anything about them, Big Ben has these just terrible struggles on the road. So maybe they start feeding Bell a little bit more against the Bears. I do think Jay Ajayi is going to be chalk, but I think he's going to be chalk for the wrong reasons. People are going to circle him because they're playing the Jets, but I think you have to look at just how many touches he gets a game. The percentages are just off the charts. And just real quick, for me, LaShawn McCoy is another guy. I really like him this week, especially in GPPs, because I think Buffalo is going to upset Denver. We were talking about it before this, but I think that's a real trouble spot for Denver, their first road game with Trevor Siemian. And I think McCoy, if healthy, is going to get a ton of shares. So give me your thoughts on the running backs and who you like.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at running backs, I primarily look at volume. And Bell has had 2 floor games so far, essentially. But last week, he got the ball a lot. And even though he didn't look fantastic, he's still Le'Veon Bell. And he's getting the ball a ton. And the game script is going to favor him in Chicago. I mean, they should be winning most of the game. And I just see him getting at least 25 to 30 touches. And the Kareem Hunt was funny because I faded him completely last week. I mean, I was like recency bias, ownership, Hunt could do it because he's just a stud, but I'm just going to fade him. And then he had that first half. I'm like, yeah, this is looking good. And then he just went off. But, I think Hunt's going to carry heavy ownership. But the thing is, his volume is not huge. I mean, he gets the ball a decent amount, but, he's just a beast when he gets the ball. So it's interesting. So, I'll probably have some of him. And we'll see it. I thought Ajayi would be a pivot from Hunt around the same price with a good game script there as well. Because Ajayi got 25 to 30 touches last week as well. And then Christian McCaffrey is going to be a guy that a lot of people are probably going to pick on or have to pick on the Saints defense. And once again, I just don't see the volume being there, even though the game script favors him a little bit. I might have some McCaffrey, but believe it or not, a guy that's been getting 15 to 20 touches a game at 4,700 on DraftKings is Jonathan Stewart, and he's probably going to get a lot of the goal line work. And I'm pretty interested in that. I might have a couple of shares of Stewart, believe it or not. And then C.J. Anderson's been an absolute workhorse, and we'll see if he picks up Trevor Siemian on the road, because I do think Denver could struggle because those first 2 games were at home for them.
Yeah, it's a game I had circled all week. We've talked about this before, and Lou, my background was in gambling and picking games and trying to find value. And then obviously when DFS started, it turned into something interesting because I loved fantasy sports, and then trying to figure out where there are teams that most people are going to like. Like, for example, I look at survivor pools all the time, and you see this week everybody's all over the Steelers. They're a road team. People are on the Packers, on the Patriots, and on the Dolphins. And it just leads me to believe that one of those road teams, could the Steelers lose on the road to the Bears, or vice versa? Could Miami lose to the Jets? Those teams, they're bad, but they're going to win at some point. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's just something I look at because I know people are scripting games and trying to figure out what's going to happen. And to me, that's part of it, trying to figure out where teams are going to struggle on the road. But to running backs, Lou, where are you looking? Because I'm intrigued to see kind of what you like on this slate.
The first thing that I did was lock in Ty Montgomery. FanDuel is just not getting with the fact that he's their primary back, he's their primary wide receiver. His price is still 7,200. That's way too low for Ty Montgomery. His biggest problem last year, I think he had sickle cell, right? He was sick. So, but now he's fine or looking better at least, and he's priced reasonably at 7,200. I gotta lock him in. So Ty Montgomery becomes a lock. Other than that, I disagree with Sean a little bit. I do think this is a McCaffrey week. They did invest a lot in him, and they've given Stewart a lot of the carries over the past 2 games, and I think it's the day that they give Christian McCaffrey the ball, and I really do against a New Orleans team, whether they go up first or whether New Orleans goes up first. I think McCaffrey benefits with the 2-3 yard dip down, because that's definitely not Stewart's thing. They'll give Stewart the ball on the 1 yard line, the 5 yard line, but I think McCaffrey has the skills this week to really take one to the house, maybe for like a short dip down, take it to the house 60 yards, and get him really confident in his on his new team. Because he's playing downs. Like, it's not like he's not playing. And the first game he got 13 rushing attempts, 8 in the next, and his targets stayed relatively consistent at 7 and 5. So his big game is there. He has the skills to really run through or around this New Orleans defense. And I think they're going to allow him to do so, considering Stewart's gotten the majority of the carries. I do like him a lot.
Hey, Lou, on that front real quick, just with McCaffrey, because the unknown is with Greg Olsen going down, that's a guy, that was his safety valve. He's a guy he looks for. So now, will he start looking at the running backs? Do you see an Ed Dixon or somebody step up? I know in a lot of season-long, people have been picking up Devin Funchess, hoping he gets some looks and maybe gets the field a little bit more. But I do think McCaffrey's going to be the guy that gets a ton of touches. As you said, they drafted him high, and he clearly, if you get him in open space, he's a special player.
Yeah, and losing Olsen is a big deal. Like, obviously, I don't have to say that, but I think over the past couple of years, he's averaging 8 targets a game or something. That's crazy. He is a wide receiver, and somebody has to catch these balls. And if they don't get the ball to Funches and they can't get a regular wide receiver game going to Kelvin Benjamin, I think that's a good hedge off each other. You do one lineup with Kelvin and Funches, and then you take them out. And if Kelvin and Funches don't do well, then see the text by mistake. If Kevin and Funches don't do well, McCaffrey will do well, because they'll be dipping the ball down to him on these 4-yard button hooks, because they won't be able to get the ball to Kelvin Benjamin. So I think if you're going to play Cam Newton, you do those 2 lineups. You take the chance and you invest in a second lineup, and you do it with Kelvin Benjamin, and you don't even have to add Funches. You could do both. You could do one. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, in my mind, I'm always just looking for raw value, 20-plus points per position, and that's where I start. Everything. So I do think if Kelvin doesn't have a good game, that means McCaffrey does have a good game. I don't see many scenarios where the Saints shut this entire offense down and allow them to score 10 points. I really don't. I could be wrong, but I do think Carolina is a talented offense, and this Saints defense is just horrible. So the answer to your question is I'm locking in Ty Montgomery and Christian McCaffrey for a lot of my lineups.
Cool. Let's move on to wide receiver. And Lou, we're going to start with you. Just a heads up, but to lead off, people love to have a stud here, whether it's Julio, Antonio Brown. We know what's been going on with Beckham. That's a little frustrating, trying to figure out. And maybe if you're in GPPs, you played him, hoping he would play. But Mike Evans, he was off the first week, so we got to see him last week. He did get a touchdown. Jordy Nelson has the hamstring issue. Amari Cooper was questionable all week. I do believe he's going to play. Crabtree had 3 touchdowns last week. The only reason I'm just kind of running through some of the top guys, A.J. Green seems to be that darling this week for the game script for Sunday Night Football, or for the game against the Packers. But kind of give me your thoughts on just the way things stack up here, Lou. And with Julio Jones, he's a guy that I guess you could say, especially what you're paying for him, he was a disappointment in week 1 and week 2. You're expecting to get more out of him. But, the week that everybody starts to get off of this guy is at the week he blows up. But receivers, I know you like
I actually agree. I'm going to try to go as low salary as possible all over my lineup, hoping to grab 3 wide receivers and rotate some of the best out. I hope that the game that Detroit had against the awful Giants, might make people think that Detroit has a better lineup or a better defense. But I do think that Julio Jones and Matt Ryan is a completely lucrative and valid, plausible correlation you could do. For 9,300 for Julio, and then Matt Ryan, the third highest at 8,500. It's expensive. I think they always have crazy high upside together. And, like Sean said, Brandon Tate was in a great spot. So, pairing together the correlation of Matt Ryan and Julio going crazy, and then you throw Brandon Tate as your second wide receiver, it's kind of good because you're hoping that Brandon Tate gets those garbage yards in the fourth quarter, assuming Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons go up big. So
Sean, real quick. Go ahead. You got something, Lou?
No, I was going to say that would be a correlation that I think could be very lucrative, but it's very expensive. You're looking at 8,500 for Ryan. You're looking at 9,300 for Julio, and then Brandon Tate is Golden Tate. Yeah. Golden Tate. Sorry. Golden Tate is 7,400, so that would be if you were confident everywhere else with cheap players in your lineup.
Sean, give me your thoughts as we look at the top receivers and maybe where you're looking.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be garbage time. I actually think Detroit versus Atlanta will be a really good game. I think Detroit's for real. If anyone's going to blow out anyone, it's going to be the Falcons blowing out the Lions. But I just see a shootout in Atlanta. Or in Detroit, I believe. But, Tate's just, he is what he is. He's not sexy. He's in the slot. Stafford has that chemistry with him. Ryan to Julio is always a very popular stack. I don't see myself paying up for a wide receiver too much. But, I like AJ Green and Mike Evans. Keenan Allen, he's been getting a ton of targets, and he's solid. Jarvis Landry had 15 targets last week, I believe, and he caught 13 of them. I know he's a run after the catch guy, but, he certainly has that upside as well. We'll see if Kelvin Benjamin's healthy, and then go according to that if we like Funchess or not. And I think Rashad Higgins is super interesting with 11 targets last week, and now Corey Coleman, I believe he broke his hand. But
he's done it back-to-back years against Baltimore. I don't know what they're doing to him, but this poor guy keeps breaking his hand every time he plays the Ravens.
But if you want to look around the 6,000 marker, Hopkins, the Texans should be throwing all game long against the Patriots because the Patriots should be ahead in that one. And Hopkins is leading the league in targets by a mile. So that, I'll have some Hopkins exposure for sure. And then you have Alshon Jeffrey and Terrell Pryor at 5,900 on DraftKings. And, Pryor just out and said that he needs to be better. So we'll see what he's doing and if Cousins will look for him more as he seems determined. Also, super punt play. Kendall Wright is now questionable, and we all know Chicago already has nobody at wide receiver. And that game script is going to have Chicago throwing all game. Marcus Wheaton, revenge game against Pittsburgh. Possible.
I like the narrative.
I do like that. Marcus Wheaton is one of those big play guys that can do that. That's funny.
Well, yeah, he was pissed off Martavis Bryant. I thought it was funny when they drafted the receiver last year, and he goes, he ain't taking my spot. He's taking Wheaton. He just basically threw him out there underneath the bus saying,
yep.
They can draft whatever receivers they want. He's not taking my spot. And Bryant did get a touchdown last week. Lou, just real quick on some of these mid-tier receivers, will you be looking anywhere? Stephon Diggs is a guy that gets a ton of action. I guess a lot of that depends on whether or not Sam Bradford's playing. A lot in the air with Green Bay and their wide receivers being banged up. Deshaun Jackson's an interesting guy because I feel like twice a year he has that 2-touchdown or even 3-touchdown game, and then he doesn't show up the rest of the way. Or will you be looking at any of these New England receivers because there's not that many, but any value play for you?
So I told you I like Rivers. So Tyrell Williams came into my mind, but that would be at very, very low shares in my GPP lineups. I agree if Jarvis Landry is able to play, that he gets so many targets, it's just not it doesn't matter if he gets a touchdown or not. If you're getting 15, 17 targets a game, you're catching 13 of them for even 4. It's like it makes sense with the PPR. So I like that. Keenan Allen is my for my week this week. This is my number 1 wide receiver, and he's sitting at 7,200. Like that's pretty crazy. So as well. Just really quick, I forgot to mention because I consider him a wide receiver sometimes. When we were talking about running backs, Theo Riddick. None of us mentioned him, right?
No, we should have though.
Yeah, Theo Riddick's in a great spot. I'm sorry to backtrack, but Theo Riddick is going up against that Atlanta D, and it really allows a lot of catches to opposing running backs, and Theo Riddick is that guy. And a lot of people were on him against the Giants. He disappointed. Short week. I think that he really has a good game. Sorry to backtrack, but that was
no. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about it week 1 about Atlanta against opposing teams' running backs, and it was one of the reasons I said I like Jordan Howard, even though he has the drop season. If you remember, he dropped the touchdown week 1 that could have won the game. And, oh, by the way, that's the coming out party for Tariq Cohen, who caught, 7 or 8 balls out of the backfield. And then we fast forward, to week 2, and we look at Ty Montgomery, who ends up with 2 touchdowns as well, catching the ball out of the backfield, running it. They really have struggled with that. So this could be that week where Theo Riddick, catches a multitude of passes, especially if they're trailing.
I actually think it's more of an obvious play. And the fact that he disappointed on the small slate, I think it might bring people off of him. And Sean, like you said, whether that game is a shootout or a blowout, I really see all these guys performing. Whether it's I would love it to be a shootout because then Golden Tate gets a last minute touchdown or something. They keep wanting to throw to him and get those 10-yard digs. But I guess the only other wide receiver point I would make is I'm not on DeAndre Hopkins. I'm like, I don't know how much ownership I'm on yet, but I'm like all in on New England's defense. New England's defense, they shut down the number 1 guy. Like that's what they do. So assuming they shut down Hopkins, who else do they have to go to? And Fuller, I've been looking
the tight ends are out. The backs.
It's like Fuller is gone. What do you run and throw to Lamar Miller 400 or whoever? It's Miller, right?
Yeah, Miller and Dante.
I have no confidence in any of these guys. So I think that because of his targets, DeAndre Hopkins will be high owned, but I do not like him. I'm fading him at all costs. I think that Bill Belichick knows what he's doing, and taking away the number 1 option is what he does. He might get 20 balls thrown at him, but I actually think there's a possibility he only catches 2 or 3 of them.
I mean, that's close. It is possible for sure. I mean, I'm not against that. I'm just saying the volume is going to be there. I mean, like you said, even if he gets 18 or 20 targets, he might only catch 5 for 60 yards and have 11 points, and that's not quite value. But
yeah,
you might want to have a couple of shares just to be safe.
Yeah. Hey, go ahead.
It's a perfect hedge if you have overexposure to Hopkins or New England's defense. Just try to even it out because I think it's one or the other. Like the other correlation I mentioned Atlanta and Julio Jones and Tate. I think that you got to go with the correlations. So I think it's definitely worth it to do both.
Let's move on to tight end here real quick, and then we'll get the kicker defense. And if you guys want to chime in, I told you I play more FanDuel than DraftKings, so I'm all about those kickers, and you guys get your flex, which we'll get into that. But tight ends this week, a couple names that I like. I mean, Ertz is to me is always a plug and play. I feel comfortable having him in my lineup, especially if I'm playing cash. But this week, I really like Martellus Bennett and Hunter Henry. I think Hunter Henry is going to get a bunch of targets. We talked about Eric Berry being out. And, another game I circled this week was the Chargers against the Chiefs. They've had some bad luck, the Los Angeles Chargers, the first 2 weeks. But it's a rivalry game. You got 2 teams within a division. I think the Chargers are going to win the game personally outright, but I think Hunter Henry plays a big part of it, and I agree with Keenan Allen, as we were talking about earlier. Those are 2 guys I had circled, and Martellus Bennett, to me, is a guy that I think he'll have opportunities to get open. And with the uncertainty with a lot of things outside of Ty Montgomery with the wide receiver position for Green Bay, he might be the guy I trust more. And at 5,500, or excuse me, 5,600 on FanDuel, I don't have a problem playing him. I don't know that I'm going to spend up at tight end this week. Sean, give me your thoughts. I'll start with you as far as tight ends go.
All right. Well, first off, I'm going to say you need to have a little parlay going there with the Bills, Chargers, and Colts, and they're all underdogs, man. You'll make bank. I mean, it's very possible.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
A lot of home dogs this week if you look at it, and a few of them are definitely going to be barking. Last night, by the way, if you were watching, the Rams covered for basically the entire game up until the 2-minute warning, which I feel bad for some of the Rams owners because San Fran plus 2.5 and they lose by 2. So just a side note.
that game for me, I was in the 600 qualifier on the 2-game slate. I was convinced that the Thursday game would be 9-6 and the Giants Detroit game would be a shootout. I was like all in on that. And then, all these guys, it's like you're in like second, 6th place, 9th place, you're like up in the top. And then, this game happens, you think it's going to be 9-6. And then all these guys from the back just start coming forward. And it's really funny on those 2-game slates how it changes immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, back to you with tight ends. Give me your thoughts on who you like.
Yeah, I think it's actually a very thin pool of tight ends this week. But if you're looking to go up, I mean, Travis Kelce is always a possibility. I mean, Andy Reid's going to try to get him the ball. And, yeah, the Chargers against the Chiefs could possibly have some high point totals there. And, I mean, Kelce is going to get his share of looks. Ertz at 5,000 on DraftKings is certainly appealing. I mean, he hasn't yet cracked the 100-yard mark, but he's averaging 9 targets and 95 yards a game. So, I mean, I know it's only 2 games, but, Wentz is looking his way for sure. So he can even be a cash play. Delaney Walker, he seems to be old faithful for Mariota at 4,400, and I think he's going to still have a decent game, and, he gets his red zone looks, but people just always shy away against teams that are facing the Seahawks. So we'll see how that goes. But I actually do like Bennett, even though he hasn't had, he's basically had 2 floor games.
Yeah.
He still has been getting a lot of looks from Rodgers. And, I mean, he's only had 2 regular season games with him so far.
Yeah, and the news just came.
Rodgers likes his tight ends.
By the way, the news just came across the wire that Randall Cobb is now a game-time decision, which, look, sometimes those guys, they'll get a little shot up, get something to help them with the pain and go through it and play. But this early in the season, maybe Cobb's taking a week off.
Yeah,
I guess a lot of that depends.
And if you can get 7 or 8 targets, especially, I mean, Bennett's got soft hands. He'll eventually, I'm guessing, be a nice red zone guy for Rodgers. At 4,000, 7 to 8 targets is totally doable. And then you saw what Doyle did last week against Arizona, I believe, where he caught all 8 of his balls from Brissett. So, he's gonna get his targets at 3,600 at home against the Browns. And then a guy who I'm gonna have some exposure to because he only needs 9 fantasy points on DraftKings is Zach Miller. I mean, we already said it. The Bears are extremely shorthanded. They're gonna have to be throwing. He's had 2 floor games at 8 and 10 fantasy points, and he only needs 9. So the upside is there for Zach Miller as well.
Lou, give me your thoughts on the tight end position and where you might be looking.
So I like to keep my sample sizes small. I don't like to find a bunch of things I like about a bunch of people. I try to think about who is the highest, for tight end at least, the highest producing tight end of the week. So I think Sean was right with I think Travis Kelce. I think that he gets so many targets and it's just too much. And I know his price is 7,100, but I think you can make it work with all the value around the industry. And I don't think you have to go as low as the minimum ever. But if I were to go lower, I do like Zach Ertz as well. He's becoming he has a good rapport with Wentz. And if I were to go any lower, I think Martellus Bennett. I think it's pretty clear cut this week on tight ends. Maybe Colby Fleener in with game flow. If that game is, if like maybe New Orleans is getting blown out, the fourth quarter they do a lot of 15-yard post outs and ins to Colby Fleener. I could see that happening. And he had a great week 1, but a horrible week 2, so he'll be high owned. Or no, he had 13 points in week 1 against Minnesota, great defense, and 10.8 in week 2. So his targets went down from 6 to 4, but for the most part, Colby Fleener's in that offense. Last year he wasn't. Last year they got away from him at large stretches of time. So Colby Fleener, I guess, at 57, and Martellus Bennett is as low as I would go. But then Hunter Henry has a correlation with the quarterback that I like, and I do like Hunter Henry. So I guess the lowest I'd go is Hunter Henry at 55, but I will be having the majority of my investments in.
Well, let's talk kicker and defense here. We lost Lou for just a second. I'm sure I'll be right back. But kicker and defense, Lou, let's start with you because we had an interesting conversation on how much FanDuel you're going to play, and if you don't, then you can just pass on the kickers. But typically the strategy is if you have enough money, maybe you're paying up for a stud. If you're looking at a high-scoring game, some people like to look at the lowest-scoring games, hoping you see field goals. You always have to check the weather. But give me your thoughts, kickers and defense. I know you like New England's defense.
Yeah. First of all, sorry about that. Somebody keeps calling me, and I didn't realize. Doing this on my phone, I forgot to turn on. So let's hope they don't call back. Yeah. So kicker, my idea about kicker is I don't think FanDuel should include them. There's not many stats that will tell you kicker projections. So I hate it. So what I do is I try to save my money, and it's one of my earlier decisions, but I try to pair my kicker and my defense together, and I don't have to pair them together, but this week I do love New England. I think they're going to shut down Hopkins. I don't think there's any other options there. I will be over invested in New England. I don't get this feeling very often, but this week I really do like them. Bill Belichick is just a genius. I don't have to say that. And with only one option, literally look at their options. I don't even know who they're going to throw to. Let me see really quick. But long story short, Gostkowski is where I would go. This week I'm going to be pairing New England and Gostkowski in a lot of my GPP lineups, probably the majority. We had 9 points in week 1. He had 12 points in week 2. It's just when you're scoring that much, it's only a matter of time before they give you a couple of field goal attempts in the midst of 5 extra points or whatever it is, So I'll be going Gostkowski this week.
All right, let's go to you, Sean. Kickers and defense. Where are you looking?
Oh my goodness. Kicker wise, I don't play much FanDuel, but
all right.
I think if I was looking at a game to take a kicker, I don't know even who their kickers are, in all honesty, since they keep flopping around. I mean, I know Suck Up actually, but I think the Titans versus Seahawks could be a game where there's a lot of field goals.
Yeah, Blair Walsh. He's from Minnesota in Seattle now. It seems like they trade kickers off every year into a new logo.
I knew Hoshko wasn't there, but
yeah.
If I was looking at defense, I mean, I'm probably just gonna pay up for defense for the most part. I know you like Buffalo. If Buffalo wins the game, I think it's gonna be ugly, 17-13 or 13-10 or something stupid. I like the Broncos defense. Tyrod Taylor's receivers haven't been getting loose, and the Broncos secondary is just nuts. And we'll see if LaShawn McCoy can get his. I mean, the volume's going to be there for McCoy for sure.
Well, that's the thing. Then, I love McCoy for GPP plays, and I know a lot of people aren't going to play him in cash, but to me, what happened this past week with Denver and Dallas was a bit of a misnomer. With Ezekiel Elliott getting shut down. I know he got called out by a lot. LaDainian Tomlinson said he quit on his team and all this other stuff. But the Denver defense had been able – I mean, you've been able to run on them. Yeah. And that was the one thing is that you could pick up chunks. I mean, Melvin Gordon had done it last year at times, and on Monday night it wasn't great. But I just think on their first road game and the fact that Trevor Siemian has a hard time stringing together first downs. He has more 3-and-outs than anybody else. I think Buffalo's defense is going to – I think they score once, but I think they shut down that Denver offense.
Yeah, I mean,
I am. I'm going to play a ton of that's me with my hunch.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally respectable. Yeah, and I even wrote up Ezekiel Elliott, so I'm not just going to say that Denver's defense is just nails and they have no flaws at all. I mean, McCoy could do some things there and Buffalo could score, but Buffalo only had 3 points last week against the Panthers. I mean, they still could win the game because the Broncos at home versus away is just night and day. But another team I'm looking at is the Steelers at Chicago. I mean, their front seven is really quick, and rushing the passer is results in turnovers and sacks. And I think Glennon or Trubisky. I mean, this might be a game where Trubisky comes in the second half even.
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's possible
if that happens. As far as just some of the things you heard me talk about Buffalo's defense and liking them, and maybe that's a GPP play. I know a lot of people are going to jump on the Dolphins simply because they're playing the Jets. It's just weird when you watch some of these teams. They go on the road. You don't see. You don't see how comfortable they should be. Seattle's a different team on the road as opposed to home with the crowd noise and everything that helps factor in there. And I don't love a lot of defenses this week. I may go to Buffalo. One thing I actually like, and look, I'm from Baltimore. I like Jacksonville's defense if Jalen Ramsey plays, and I know you'd have to have them on the slate if you're doing the all day or if you're doing something else. But with the Ravens losing Marshall Yanda, I know they were fine in the second half against the Browns, but I think Jacksonville's front seven brings a little bit more. And I talked to a couple of the coaches and players, and they all hate playing in the London game. And I'm not saying that. I think Jacksonville's a little bit more accustomed to it because they do it each and every year. But we'll see how that plays out. I think that's going to be a really ugly game.
Jacksonville has the best cornerback combination in the league, and people have to start recognizing them as a valid defense here because they really have put some pieces together.
Yeah, Ramsey is pretty good.
If you can't throw, there's teams that if you look at the matchups, if you can't get it to your number one and number two, and you can have two cornerbacks that are single coverage against two talented wide receivers that a team banks on, some of these Jaguars. I wrote up the Jaguars last week on the DFSCoach.com, and it didn't go well. But for a little while, they were holding the Titans to, they were interceptions back and forth. It ended up, I guess they ended up adjusting, but certain teams that don't have a running attack and rely on two wide receivers, maybe like the Giants, that would be a team I think the Jaguars could really take advantage of.
All right, let's do this. So since we kind of wrapped up, I'll start with you, Sean. You have a must-play, a guy that you're going to have predominantly in most of your lineups, because I think I know where Lou's going, but give me your thoughts, Sean.
I actually don't think I do have a must-play. I mean, making a cash lineup this week is going to be really weird. I'm definitely going to make a cash lineup because that's what I normally do. I usually go 30 or 40% cash, and then I just max out one of the small GPPs just so I at least break even every week and I have that upside. But I don't know if I have anyone that I absolutely love. I mean, I'll just go on with a hunch and say that Le'Veon Bell might actually go not necessarily low owned in general, but lower owned than he should be.
Yeah.
And I'll probably have a decent amount of Le'Veon Bell this week, and I think he'll get a touchdown with all of his touches.
What about you, Lou? Are you going your Rivers Keenan Allen connection? Is that where you're probably going to be like Ty Montgomery? So.
Yeah, I guess my real question is, do I do Phillip Rivers with Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry, or do I just stay complacent at Keenan Allen and try to make Kelsey work? That's going to be my biggest question this weekend. But I'm pretty ready to go in terms of my core. And the other thing you got to take into account is we're doing this podcast on Friday at 11:40 a.m. It's so much stuff happens in that time. If there's any major injury news, a lot of this becomes irrelevant, or not irrelevant, but better plays arise. So you do have to remember that, and you got to monitor the injuries and the weather, and especially with kickers, the wind. One day I picked a kicker in a really expensive league, and I forgot to check the wind, and it was Chicago or something, and a place where a kicker could never hit in 20-mile-an-hour winds. So you got to do your research up until Sunday for sure.
Yeah, for me, you know, talking about GPPs because cash lineup, cash is going to be interesting this week. But there's a certain combination of, you mentioned Le'Veon Bell, LaShawn McCoy, and Julio Jones, where I think people may jump off this week of all three of those guys, and you might get them lower owned. I'll have certain combinations of them in my GPPs and try to find value at wide receiver, even if I can get a cheapy quarterback that I think could go off. But those are the guys. And look, I've been touting Buffalo's defense. Let's hope they don't give up 30 points and I look like a jackass. But I feel good about them this week. And I agree with Lou on San Diego's offense. I mean, I had Hunter Henry circled, and once I started looking at the numbers, Keenan Allen was kind of jumping off the charts at me. So I don't know if I'll play both of them together. I may in a lineup or two, but I definitely going to try to get exposure to
you know what it is? It's like that area. It's just like Keenan Allen's such a talented wide receiver. It's like I can't imagine him not getting over the top on a rookie safety, and and on top of that, he gets the targets for the 10-yard dips. It's like even if they score in a GPP, the mindset even if Rivers and Allen score one more point than any other combination, that's the point that's going to win you the $1 million compared to $100,000 or whatever in whatever tournament you're in.
Yeah,
it's those little decisions that you think that they're simple, it's obvious this quarterback is going to throw to him all day. And I like the AJ Green thing. I'm just nervous about the ownership. I like keeping my quarterback wide receiver correlation at low ownership, and I hope that people don't see Phillip Rivers, except the people who watch this show.
All right, we got a lot in today, and we're going to get into more next week as well. Follow him at Jaguar DFS, at Sean Hoy 27. All the Daily Roto Shark guys, definitely check out what they have to offer. The sheets are freaking phenomenal. So much information on there for you to digest. And once things change, Daily Roto Sharks will be on top of it. So Lou, Sean, appreciate you guys joining me this week, and look forward to catching you guys down the line.
Have a good one, man. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, so